the prophecy of the popes and so much more today. And I guess my biggest question is, are we at the end times? And if we are, what does that mean for all of us? So by the end of this video, you will feel informed and a lot better about everything that's going on. I had a different topic planned for today, but we had to scratch that completely because there's a lot going on, especially with Pope Francis, who just passed away. And it was also just Easter. There's a lot of kind of weird timing things going on. And so I'm going to get to the heart of what's actually happening and what that means for all of us, because I do think that what is occurring is quite significant. Now, whatever your beliefs are, I think that there's a lot of energy, let's say, wrapped up in the Vatican, wrapped up in the Pope. And I think things are changing very rapidly. And what's fascinating is some of what is happening right now has been prophesized. So we're going to go back in ancient history a little bit today, and we're going to talk about some prophecies. We're going to talk about some prophecies. There's actually been quite a few prophecies related to the Antichrist and the Pope dying, and this potentially being the very last Pope ever before the end times. And even Dolores channeled Nostradamus and brought him through. And there's also a prophecy that correlates with what exactly is happening right now. So, lots to get into today. This is going to be more so historical and informative rather than just pure sort of what I've downloaded. I will give my 2 cents at the end and give you a lot to think about, I think. So I do want to mention before I get started, of course, as always, if you like these videos, if you're into conspiracies and aliens and all the weird, wacky things, not just on this planet, but in the universe, then definitely subscribe to the channel and like it and share it with other weirdos in your life. I will have to say, for reasons I will not disclose, I have had to take down all of my political videos and all of my edgier conspiracy stuff across social media networks. So just an FYI, I have all of those videos up on my website if you want to go see them. A lot of them are for free. You just have to sign up and be a seeker. Okay, it's completely free. We'll never ask for money, and you'll find most of the weird videos there that I had to take down from YouTube, especially on the website. Okay, so please just keep that in mind, and I'm sorry I had to take those down. We will be kind of putting them back eventually, hopefully. All right, so let's just get right into it because there's so much to get into. So the main prophecy that I want to talk about here is from Saint Malachy, and this is in the 12th century, okay? He was an archbishop, and he had a list of 112 short phrases describing each pope until the end of time. That this was sort of from this saint's perspective, okay? And so he went into great detail about the final pope, and he described the final pope as Peter the Roman, who was going to reign during the time of great tribulation. And there's a lot of like sort of speculation around this, and I think the first pope ever was Saint Peter, so there's sort of this this looping type of thing. Obviously, I'm not a historian, but there's something in the beginning and the end. But anyway, this Saint Malachy, he happened to be quite correct on a lot of his popes and descriptions and where they came from and what they were going to do. And so people are really finding a lot of similarities with what Saint Malachy was describing as the very last pope before the end times. Now, he did not explicitly state that the very last pope was going to encounter the Antichrist before dying. However, a lot of people, and even ancient historians, Christians, and Catholics alike, are all interpreting and have interpreted St. Malachy's mention of the very last pope being confronted with tribulations as being confronted specifically with the Antichrist, which I think is very fascinating. Now, this is the speculation that's going on online. This is not what I've channeled or what I've seen or what I've remote viewed. This is what people are talking about. This is why Pope Francis passing away is a huge deal right now. Not only because it was on or during Easter weekend, but because Pope Francis ended up seeing and having a meeting with J.D. Vance, who is the American, oh my God, the American Prime Minister. Oh my God, sorry. Vice President. Wow. This is how much I'm out of politics. The American Vice President, okay, J.D. Vance. And it was a very, very brief sort of meeting. I'm surprised the Pope even took it. He was quite sick. And also the Pope was 88 at the time. So now the speculation isn't necessarily that J.D. Vance poisoned him or, offed him or anything like that. The speculation, okay, the speculation online, not my speculation, is that people are saying J.D. Vance is the Antichrist and his visit to the Pope right before dying is the interpretation of this is the final Pope, this is the end days, this is what Saint Malachy was talking about the whole time, all right? And that is completely up to your own interpretation. Like I said, I'm kind of skimming over the details. Please do your own research and feel into this with your own intuition. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the Antichrist in a little bit, okay? But that's one major interpretation, and this is why people are really talking about it. But there has been a lot of other prophecies throughout ancient history in relation to the Pope meeting with the Antichrist during the end days, during the time of, basically during this time. There's the third secret of Fatima. Go ahead and look that up if you want more information on that. And essentially, this was information released in 2000 by the Vatican. And they were talking about a bishop that was dressed in white, that was martyred on a hill of corpses. Some interpret this as, once again, the prophecy of a future pope meeting his death during the end times. And then there was two other sort of holy women who also prophesied something very similar. One was named Marie Julie Janeni. Okay, sorry about that. Probably butchered that. And then Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, who both sort of had similar visions of a confrontation between good and evil within the church, related during this time of the end days. Okay, and so. Let's talk about Dolores Cannon. Let's talk about the Antichrist a little bit, and then we'll go into sort of my interpretation and what I'm picking up on, not just from the Pope passing, but also just from what's happening on planet Earth right now in general, because wow, it's a lot. I think it's a lot for anyone, but especially just for the average person who maybe doesn't have a spiritual base, whether it be a Christian base or a more sort of open-minded spiritual base. It would be a very difficult time right now to be an atheist and not have a belief in something greater. If you really just believed in the third dimensional world, it would be a very hard time to exist in a day-to-day, I would find anyway. Now, I will say, I do want to go back and say that Saint Malachy, okay, the one who was predicting sort of the Pope and the end times, also predicted that for the very last pope, which people are pointing to Pope Francis as the very last pope ever, which who knows what that really means, that Rome / the Vatican is going to fall, okay, during the end days. And this is very fascinating because this is something that I predicted probably over 10 years ago now, that the Vatican would fall in the form of deceit. Specifically, all of the deceptiveness that the Vatican has been playing a role in, all of a sudden the information comes to light and people turn against the church and specifically turn against the Vatican. Now, what I saw back then, because one of the first things I really wanted to remote view back in 2010, 2011, way long before I was ever online and long before I ever even told anyone I could do this, was the Vatican archives. What are they hiding in the Vatican? One of the things that I saw was the deep underground tunnels that were all beneath the Vatican, and some really creepy sort of ritualistic rooms that they had under there. And then on top of that, I saw a much more modern sort of facility. It was like a modern Vatican sort of pressurized type of locked down facility where they had a lot of very old documents. And so I scanned through these documents, and oddly enough, as a remote viewer, what you can do is you can read things without even opening a book, let's say. And a lot of the things that the Vatican has been holding for a number of years is some of the history related to extraterrestrials and aliens. So what I saw back then is at a certain point in time, this information is going to be released. And at that point in time, everyone who has been very faithful and very much so a big believer was going to turn against the Vatican because the Vatican had been deceiving us for such a long time, right? So I saw that a long time ago. Does it relate to what we're talking about? I don't know, but that is something that I picked up on. And it's fascinating that a part of this Pope prophecy is that Rome, or the city of the seven, I forget how he mentioned it, but essentially it points to Rome and the Vatican falling during the end times. And that could be a part of it. This great deception being revealed could be a big part of it. So let's talk a little bit more about Dolores Cannon and the Antichrist for a second. So Dolores Cannon, love her to bits, by the way. She was really just making waves before it was cool to make waves, let's just say. And anyway, and so she wrote a book, I guess kind of channeled a book. And essentially what she would do, if you're not familiar with her work, she would essentially like past life regression someone, so put someone into a trance-like state, and then she would bring through, sometimes she would bring through past lives, sometimes she would bring through like extraterrestrial or alien lifetimes, which was so before her time. And I think a lot of the work that she did really allowed me to come to this planet and just sort of pick up the pieces and just go for it, which is really incredible. So I owe her so much. Anyway, so she wrote, or I guess channeled, this book, and it's called Conversations with Nostradamus. I haven't read it. I actually don't know much of her work. I just know that I really resonate with her. And so in this book, she essentially brings through Nostradamus through someone who has been in a trance-like state. So kind of like a trans-channeling type of facilitation situation. And of course, we know Nostradamus was one of the great prophets in world history. And one of the things that Nostradamus mentioned is that the Antichrist is actually alive today. And so here are the details, apparently, of the Antichrist. All right. So apparently he's a male born specifically on February 4th, 1962 in Jerusalem, but he was raised with very wealthy, I think, Egyptian or Middle Eastern families, and then he went to school for philosophy and computer or something like that. Anyway, there's a lot of information that they provided on this man. And so, of course, what did I do? I ChatGPT'd it, and I put in all of the details that Nostradamus sort of brought through, and I said, can you match these very specific details with anyone who is known in history? Dun 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 dun. No. ChatGPT, of all AI, whatever, technology we have, literally said there is no one of note that matches those specific credentials, despite having so many different specific credentials. So I did the hard labor for you, and I could not find any sort of links. But it's fascinating, right? I mean, as always, take everything with a grain of salt, but I think that's really interesting. Now, there's another interpretation of the Antichrist, and this is the one that resonates with me, but as always, take it or leave it. And the interpretation, so First of all, are we in the end days? Yeah, I do. I absolutely do believe that we are deep in the book of Revelations right now. We are truly in the end times. And I don't mean that to be like fear-based, because I'm actually really excited about it. This is the really truly the end of an era, and the end of the era is the end of the age of ignorance, the end of the age of darkness, the end of polarization and separation, and it's the end of the us versus them mentality. It really truly is. The end of an era only ever indicates the beginning of a new era, right? So, the end times in the book of Revelation, it sounds so scary, but it's not. Because as we know within physics, right, energy never dies. It's only ever repurposed. It's only ever reborn. It's only ever reformed, right? And that's where we're in right now. We are in this reforming era. And that's why, I'm definitely not a fan of Trump, but he is the bringer of chaos. He is the great destroyer. I forget what the word was when I channeled him, but really the bringer of chaos is something that really came up as his sole contract. And he's just expediting a process that was already initiated and was already in our planetary contracts. So yeah, okay. Now, as we know, during the end times, during the end of any era, there is disillusionment, there is confusion, there is suffering, there is pain, there is polarity, there is ignorance, there is projection, there's all of that. And that's what's happening right now. And I've said this for a long time, but it has to get worse before it gets better. We are getting to that pinnacle of the worst. We're getting there. We're almost there, okay? Things are bad. There's no sugarcoating it, okay? But they have to get bad. We have to destroy the old systems before we revamp them. And do I think that Trump is the one who's going to bring us into the new era? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. He's the destroyer. He's breaking everything down. He's creating the utmost amount of chaos, not just locally, but globally. And he's doing it in quick time, okay? Which is shocking to so many people who have not been sort of following the energy or tuning in with their intuition. So, my interpretation of the Antichrist is we are in the end times, and if you interpret it in the sense that we all have darkness within us, and the Antichrist as a sort of metaphor is not necessarily one person who's going to deceive us all. It's more so the deception that's embodied within the disillusionment of greed and jealousy and attachment and the five senses and the distractions and AI and once again, the illusion, the disillusion that's happening with all of us right now. All of our priorities are in the wrong place. We're all wasting so much precious time that we get to experience here on planet Earth. We're putting our focus into the wrong areas. And I think I can say that for pretty much every one of us, myself included. I could definitely shape up on my focus and my intentions, right? And I think that we're all just getting sucked into this matrix a little bit. And so the Antichrist during the end times can be interpreted as a sort of more of a metaphorical understanding that we're all going to get sucked into this aspect of self or the darkness or the ego, right? However you want to interpret that. Now, the only reason why this version of the Antichrist resonates the most with me is because a long time ago, same thing, probably back in 2010, 2011, I was really channeling Jesus. And I think a lot of my early remote viewing and my early sort of deep meditation focus was about Catholicism. And the reason why it was about Catholicism back then is because I was raised Catholic. And when I was younger, I wanted to be a nun. Like, I thought that I was a messenger of God. And I felt very disheartened when I sort of learned that the framework of what the information was presented in was not necessarily entirely accurate. So one of the first things I really wanted to get into was like, okay, was he real? Was Jesus real? Who is God? Like, I just needed to know all these things. And so back then, when I asked the question, is Jesus going to come back? Like, is he going to resurrect? Is he going to be reincarnated? However you want to interpret that, is he coming back? I need to know. And then I also need to know, who is he, right? And of course, we've had various cult leaders all say that they are the reincarnation of Jesus, leading up to the Twin Flames cult, that holy, like, we're talking my generation, we're still with this idea of I am the resurrection of Jesus. Like, it blows my mind that people can still get away with that. Anyway, so I had to ask the question, and guess what the answer was. Like I said, take everything with a grain of salt. The information or the answer that came through is that no, Jesus as a being, as an ascended master, was not going to reincarnate, was not going to come down in a flesh body anymore. That time is past, okay? However, Christ consciousness is going to come back through all of us. That each one of us is going to find this vibrational level, at least even a fraction of the vibrational level that Jesus was at. And at a certain point, when you vibrate at such a high frequency, the traditional laws of physics just don't apply to you anymore. So yeah, instantaneous healing and walking on water and kind of making food out of nothing, or alchemizing water into wine, or all the things that he did, and maybe he didn't do all of those things, but that was him just overriding the laws of physics and being able to do some miraculous things because he was vibrating at a different frequency. So the information that came to me 10 plus years ago was that Christ consciousness is coming back. Christ is coming back, but it's coming back in each and every one of us. So within that same lane, within that same thought, can we not just contemplate that the Antichrist, as a metaphor, is also within all of us? And it's like the saying goes, which wolf are you going to feed, right? Are you going to feed the light or the dark? Because we all have that capacity within us. And I want to actually follow this up with one last statement, okay? And actually, before I get to the last statement, once again, please share this video, like and subscribe. If you want more content like this, once again, for reasons I'm not going to disclose, I had to take down a lot of content. And so all of that content you will find on my website. So please go check that out, okay? And my last sentiment here is this. Years ago, it definitely wasn't 10 years ago, but maybe like 5 to 8 years ago, I was really worried about the balance of this planet. And one of my biggest things was, look, we live in a polarity universe. So no matter what, if you're in the second or the third or the fourth or even the fifth dimension frequency, polarity still exists. So my biggest question was, what is going to happen to this planet and the balance of this planet if we kick out all of the reptilians, if we kick out all of the Illuminati members, if we kick out, all of the darkness on the planet? How do we maintain balance? Like, what's going to really happen? And, is there a balance? Are we going to be imbalanced? Is there no need for a balance on a higher frequency? What's the answer there? And here's the information that came through. Instead of having individuals on this planet who are really, really dark, we're talking murderers and serial killers and, just like bad people, okay? Just corrupt individuals. Instead of having really, really bad people, and then likewise, really, really good people who will just sacrifice everything for everyone, instead of having a polarity within each individual person, we are transitioning to a more unified field within each of us, which means we're not getting rid of darkness. We are bringing that darkness into our being, and we are coexisting with darkness along with coexisting with light. It's no longer a choice of dark or light. It's accepting both as the unity of the universe, as part of the universe, and then bringing both aspects within us. So instead of having both existing in extreme opposite ends on the planet, both will exist within each of us. And then every day we get to show up and choose. Okay? So that resonated with me. And I hope it resonates with you as well. Now, please, please, please keep in mind, right now, at this time, you are being pulled between a high vibration and a low vibration. Every single day, every single moment of your day, you are being pulled between what choice are you going to make? How are you going to respond? How are you going to react? And you've got either low vibrational responses or high vibrational responses. And based on the amount of frequency responses you make determines and dictates the timeline that you end up shifting into. And of course, that timeline determines not only what's happening in the collective, in your reality and timeline, but what's happening in your own individual life, in your reality and timeline. It's all based on your choice. So you're going to be feeling very overwhelmed right now because in every single given moment of your day, you are going to feel the overlapping effect of every single choice that is entirely possible. We are deep diving into a sea of infinite possibilities. So how do we get out of that? The way that we get out of polarity and infinite choices, which is nice to have, but also super overwhelming, is through 0-point frequency. The only way to get into 0-point frequency is through non-observation. So how do we get into a point of 0-point frequency where we don't actually have to choose, where we just observe objectively? You take a step back and you listen instead of speak. Instead of choosing and taking action, you observe. And when we can do that, we get ourselves into unity. And through that unification of light and dark and every single timeline, we step out of overwhelm. And then the path ahead seems very clear because it is the path of least resistance. I hope that makes sense. I love you guys so much. Keep up the good work. This is a crazy time to be alive, but guess what? You chose to be here at this time, not only to learn and to receive and to navigate, but to give. You are needed here. No matter what the capacity is, you are needed, and I am very grateful for you. Bye for now.